Hello and welcome to my ultimate class guide for the Executor in Nightreign. In today's video, we'll be discussing in depth what the Executor's class is all about and how you can get the most out of it, and discuss everything you need to know in terms of what weapons are going to be the best for him, as well as what relics and passive skills you want to keep your eye out for, and also how the class operates and what it is going to be capable of achieving. So without further ado, let's discuss what the Executor is all about and how you can get the most out of him. So the Executor is going to be one of the highest DPS dealing characters in the game, and it is going to be a very nice all-rounder character which you can kind of fit in any class setup with your allies. This means that if your class is going to have a lot of squishy characters, maybe people are playing bows, maybe people are playing mages, you can use the Executor as a DPS front-running tank, or if you already have a tank on your squad, you can kind of use the Executor to just get behind enemies and do mass amounts of damage while the tank ends up taking aggro most of the time. This is going to be a very versatile class, and it is definitely going to be one that can do a mass amount of damage. It's going to be best utilized in one-on-one fights, since you are going to have the starting weapon, which is going to be the Executor's Blade, which starts with the ailment that is going to be blood loss, meaning that you're going to be doing percentage of damage based on total HP, which means that this is going to be best utilized against enemies that have higher HP. Now, that doesn't mean the Executor can't hold his own against groups of enemies. On the contrary, he can do just fine. However, it is really going to shine when you are going to be up against bosses. Now, the Executor is going to come with a couple of abilities as well as a passive. The passive is going to be Tenacity. So what Tenacity is going to do is it is going to trigger every time that you end up either receiving or curing a status or ailment, and that is going to be things like blood loss, frostbite, or other positive benefits as well, potentially. And this is going to allow you to get benefits for 20 seconds, and these benefits are going to range from extra damage up to 20%, as well as increased stamina recovery speed when this passive ability is triggered. You're also going to be getting access to a very unique skill, which is going to be the Suncatcher character skill, and the reason why this one is so unique is going to always be available, and there's no cooldown. You can activate this whenever you want. However, you do need to be aware this is going to take out your cursed sword, and the cursed sword is going to come with a couple of pros and cons. One of the cons is going to be that you're going to move a lot slow while your cursed sword is out, so you're going to want to make sure that you're close to enemies before you activate this. You're also not going to be able to sprint while you have the cursed sword out. If you do sprint, it will take you back down to your regular sword, so make sure you utilize this sparingly, as you aren't going to have very high mobility when you utilize it. Now, what do you get for using the cursed sword? Now, the cursed sword is going to allow you to do increased damage, and it's also going to allow you to have increased attack speed with your sword, so this is going to allow you to put out a lot more DPS on characters. However, the best aspect of the cursed sword is going to be the fact that you are going to be able to deflect and parry attacks. Now, you can do this by pressing L1 on console when enemies attack you, and if you time this correctly, you'll hear a loud clashing noise, and you'll end up seeing the attack will do no damage to you, which means that you have successfully parried the attack. If you do this 3 times correctly, you will end up getting the sword in its charge state. You'll notice you'll have a very bright yellow glow on your sword, which means that if you end up pressing L2, you will do a very big attack, which will exhaust the charge, but will also do a massive amount of damage. You can also utilize this to break stances and do guard counters on enemies, which will then potentially allow you to stun them, and then you can follow this up by using an attack immediately after, and this will do a big finishing move on the enemy, doing big amounts of damage. It's also important to note that when you do end up pressing the dodge button, you won't be rolling when in the stance. Instead, you'll be doing a kind of sidestep, which can allow you to do successfully more dodges in a much shorter amount of time. However, this will very quickly drain your stamina, so you do have to watch out for the stamina. The damage also done in Cursed Sword will scale with your character's attributes, so don't worry about leveling past it, as when you do level up, this will increase the damage that you will be able to operate in Cursed Sword, so it will still be applicable into the later stages of the run. The Cursed Sword is definitely going to be one of the highest skill aspects of this character, and is going to require you to get your timings right. You're not going to be able to parry all attacks, so you need to recognize when attacks are going to be parryable and when they're going to have to be dodged. Some attacks are going to be range attacks, such as blasts of fire, or maybe your enemy's going to throw objects at you. Those are typically not going to be parryable, but typically melee hits from swords or from bites from enemies, that will be parryable. So you're going to have to learn which ones are going to be counterable with this and which ones you're going to have to end up rolling. Being able to recognize that effectively is going to make or break this build, and is going to allow you to do increased damage and stunning enemies, which is going to help you and your teammates out a lot, as stunning enemies does mean that you and your allies are going to be able to get a lot of free hits in if you use this build correctly. It's recommended that you only use the Cursed Sword when enemies are aggroed on you, as you don't want to be chasing enemies while you do have your Cursed Sword out, considering that how slow you're going to move. Then now moving on to the ultimate ability of the Executor, let's talk about the aspects of the Crucible Beast, which is going to turn you into a giant wolf-like creature, and this is going to be one of the most powerful ultimate abilities in the game, I find, because it's just so flexible what you can do. First of all, you're going to be able to do a 4-hit combo if you just spam R1, and this is going to be your basic attack, which is going to finish off with a ground slam and do a fair amount of damage. You can also use R2, which is going to do a more heavy attack, a 3-combo attack, and this one is going to do a bit more damage, but it's also going to be a bit slower. If you press L1, you will be able to do a roar attack, which is going to give you a bit of range, and the nice thing about this is it's also able to revive allies from a distance. So if an ally goes down, you can revive them without getting too close to them, and this is also going to allow you to potentially snipe off enemies that are a little bit out of reach. You can also press L2, which is going to do a massive sweeping attack with a sword, but this is going to take you out of the beast mode. So keep in mind, you don't want to be utilizing this as your first opener move while you're in the beast mode, because this will then kick you out of it and put you back down into normal form. So only utilize this when you have just a little bit left on your counter. You can see the charge meter at the bottom of your screen, the big circle. When you see that bar being depleted, you know you're near the end of the beast mode, and then you can press L2 then to utilize the sweeping attack with the sword, so you don't end up wasting the whole turn. The nice thing about the beast mode is you can also revive allies just by doing regular attacks on them. So if allies go down, you can go into beast mode, and this is going to give you a nice safe way to revive allies. If you're doing a boss fight and your allies go down, this can give you a nice safe route to revive them. It's also important to note you get increased health when you do end up entering the beast mode, and when this health bar does hit 0, you will actually end up dying even in your regular mode. So keep that in mind. You can't really dodge in beast mode, so although you have a lot of extra health, you can end up dying sometimes, which will then kill you in your regular form as well. This is also going to scale with your leveling, so when you do level up, the beast will end up doing more damage and have more HP, so don't worry about this getting out leveled in the later stages of the run as well. Now let's talk about the regular attacks on the Executor. First of all, if you do end up pressing R1, you're going to do a basic attack, and this is going to be typically your bread and butter, as successful hits with this attack is going to trigger blood loss on enemies, especially if you are going to be utilizing your starting weapon or other weapons that have the blood loss element on them as well. Now you can also end up pressing R2 for a little bit of a slower and heavier hitting attack, or you can hold R2 for a charge attack, which will then end up being able to stun enemies sometimes and give you and your allies some chances to get some free hits into it. You can also end up sheathing your weapon by holding L2. This will then be followed up by pressing either R1 or R2. If you hold L2 and press R1, you will end up doing a wide sweeping attack, which can do a bit of AoE damage. This is going to drain your FP, so keep that in mind. This actually drains a fairly decent amount of FP. If you do end up pressing R2, you'll do a similar attack, but instead it'll be a more vertical strike, which will do a little bit extra damage, but it'll be more limited to a single target. So keep that in mind as well. That will also drain your FP. It's also important to note that when you do end up charging your sword to the yellow counter, you will be able to save this by switching back to your regular mode, and the sword will stay in its charge state for later on. So you can kind of save this by utilizing this on lower level enemies or weaker enemies. You can kind of save a charge, get your sword powered up, and then go on to maybe a more difficult boss and keep that charge available for it without having to activate the charge state in the boss fight, and rather having it ready going into the boss fight later on. Now let's talk about leveling with the Executor. Leveling is going to scale typically with dexterity as well as arcane. This is obviously going to work best when you do utilize weapons, of course, that do scale with those attributes as well. This is typically going to work best with things like katanas or swords. It is also quite nice to make use of weapons that do have blood loss on them, as those are often going to have the attributes dexterity as well as arcane on them, and also just a very nice ability which is going to suit the playstyle of the Executor quite well. So let's talk about some of the weapons that you can keep your eye out for that are going to scale with the Executor. The first one is going to be the Reduvia, and this is going to be an infamous one returning from Elden Ring, the base game, and this one is going to be a dagger that also has the blood loss element on it, making it a perfect fit for the Executor. We're also going to have the Regalia of Eochaid. This one is going to be a straight sword, and it's also going to scale with both dexterity as well as arcane. There's also going to be the Bloody Hellas, which is going to be another sword that also has the blood loss element on it. There's also going to be Margot's Cursed Sword. This one, once again, it's going to have the blood loss element. And I'm sure you're seeing a pattern here. A lot of the weapons that do have blood loss on them are going to have both dexterity as well as arcane scaling. So if you see a weapon that does have the blood loss element on it, there's a good chance that it's going to work well with the Executor. There's also going to be the Mirae's Executioner Sword. This one is going to be a great sword, so not going to be the ideal fit for the Executor, but if you do end up finding it's a legendary weapon, so it's not a bad one to pick up. This one is a personal favorite of mine. This one is going going to be the Rivers of Blood. This is a katana that is going to have the blood loss element on it. And the one time that I did end up finding this on the map, I absolutely shredded damage with the Executor, as this is going to also scale with dexterity and arcane, and it's going to be able to do massive amounts of damage when in the hands of the Executor. If you can find this one, it's going to be the ideal choice for the Executor there. Moving on now to Eleonora's Pole Blade. This one is also once again going to have the blood loss element, and it's going to be a great fit for the Executor since it scales with both dexterity and arcane. There's also going to be the Mogwin's Spear, and once again, this is going to be a legendary that also has blood loss ailment. And then last, we're going to be having the Clinging Bone, which is going to be once again scaling with dexterity and arcane. No blood loss on this one, so not ideal, but definitely not a terrible one in a pinch. If you find any of these weapons on your expeditions, definitely want to pick them up. These are going to be the best options for the Executor. Now let's talk about what passives are going to work best for the Executor when you are out exploring. There are going to be a couple that are going to synergize fairly well. Some of these are going to be fairly universal, which will work well on just about any character, but some of them are going to work particularly even better when it comes to the Executor. First of all, we're going to have defeating enemies restores HP. That one is a no-brainer. This is just a generically good one for just about any character. Bleed in vicinity increases attack power. Obviously, considering a lot of our weapons are going to do blood loss, there is going to be pretty often bleed in our vicinity, so you're going to be able to have increased attack power benefiting from all that bleeding. We're also going to have improved guarding abilities since we are going to be trying to guard and do parries. This one is going to be quite useful. Improved guard counters. Again, this is going to go hand in hand with our parrying and guard counters. Then we're going to have increased maximum stamina since we are going to be slashing away at enemies. Having extra stamina is definitely going to be quite valuable. Increased maximum HP, another very generically good one, which is going to be quite valuable, especially if you're going to be trying to fill the role of the tank on your team. If you have other squishy characters and you're going to be in the front lines, having extra HP is obviously going to be quite valuable. Then we're going to have improved stance breaking, which is obviously going to be quite valuable for stunning enemies. And then we're going to have successful attack, increases attack power. Since we are going to be slashing away at enemies, we are often going to do successive attacks, which will very often increase our attack power. Another one that's going to be quite valuable for the Executor is going to be one of those effects, which is going to say while walking, do X and Y. And that's going to be quite nice because when we are using the cursed sword, we are typically going to be walking at a slow pace, which will be then triggering this ability very easily, as we do actually do a lot of walking in combat, especially when we are in our cursed sword state. Now let's talk about what relics you're going to want to be putting on here if you can find them. Now again, some of these relics aren't going to be very easily accessible. You're going to have to find them randomly, or you can do them through the quest line for the Executor. I will probably do that on a separate video because that's going to be a long discussion, so I'm not going to put that one in here, but I'll just list them so you know what to look out for in the future. So the first one is going to be Roaring restores HP while the ultimate is active. That's obviously going to be quite nice for just making sure that you have enough HP to keep going. Another one is going to be while character skills active, unlocking use of cursed sword restores HP. Again, this is going to be very valuable when you do end up utilizing that cursed sword stance. Then we're also going to have stamina recovers with each successful attack. This is going to make sure that we're able to continue putting pressure on the enemy and continuously attack them while recovering a little bit of our stamina to keep the attack chain going. We're also going to have ultimate guards charged from successful guarding to help make sure that we're able to get into our beast form more easily. Then we also have improved guard counts, which is going to obviously be very important since this build is going to be centered around parrying and doing guard counters. And then also any relics that are going to increase our dexterity, vigor, arcane, or endurance is also going to be quite nice for our build. Overall, the Executor is probably one of the best classes in the entire game. It's definitely one of the highest dealing damage classes, and it's going to be a difficult one to master. Once you do end up mastering it, once you are able to get those parrying timings down, you are going to be an absolute beast on the battlefield, and you are very easily going to be able to take down bosses with no problems at all. That being said, it's not absolutely crucial that you are going to have to utilize the parrying at all times. You can definitely use this as just a hack and slash class like any other, and it's not going to completely make or break the build. However, if you want to get the most out of using the Executor, you're definitely going to want to try and start learning those parrying timings, as this will allow you to stun enemies quite frequently, and it's especially going to be very valuable in boss fights. I think where the Executor ends up shining is typically in those one-on-one fights when you do end up fighting bosses. So this is going to be very valuable when it comes down to taking on those Night Lords, as this is going to be definitely one of the highest DPS builds in the game for those one-on-one fights. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comment section below, what are your favorite classes in Nightreign, and which ones do you want to see me make a guide on for the next video? And I'll see you guys again next time. Take care, everyone, and bye bye.